And good afternoon to you on the Nikki Maduro Show. I am Kim McAllister in for Nikki today. And thank you for being here. You guys already in the chat. So kind and so nice. I can see the contributions rolling in. Thank you, Wes, following the directions of Andreas, who also started us off with a $50 donation, so our contribution. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You can also do me a huge favor right at the top of this show. Just click that like button. It's a free moment in time. Just click it and make it happen. Thank you very much for doing that. Of course, if you'd like to contribute via Patreon or PayPal, you can go to thenickymaduroShow.com. I wanted to start off talking about this kind of historic moment where the commercial lunar lander uh, as apparently presumed lost after what was to be a historic moon landing attempt. So here's the story. This is a Japanese lunar lander. It was carrying a rover, attempted to find its footing on the moon's surface today, and marked the very first time that a commercial uh, vehicle, a commercially developed spacecraft, set down on the moon. But I guess the flight controllers on the ground couldn't regain contact, so they just presume this thing is lost. That's it. It was built by this commercial company in Japan called iSpace. They launched atop a SpaceX rocket from Cape Canaveral on December 11th. They made a 3-month trek to the enter orbit around the moon. And I guess this journey took the lander 870,000 miles through space. The touchdown was supposed to happen this afternoon, and they lost it. They were clicking down the minutes as they were trying to contact it. They tried to regain contact. They expected a communications blackout, but they just never found it again. So we don't know. They have been unable to confirm a successful landing, and they say they have to assume that they couldn't complete the landing on the lunar surface. So they are continuing to investigate the situation there. Maybe this really expensive commercial lunar lander is gone. I don't know. And it's an interesting situation. Maybe it's some new space junk that we have to worry about flying around in the in space. Uh, if you were watching the Mark Thompson show, you got to see the video of President Biden saying that he's running again, talking about uh, the things that still need fixing and the things that he's done well. What'd you think of that video? If you've seen it, what do you think of him running again? He has formally declared that he is running for a re-election in 2024. Of course, reaction from former President Trump, who put a post up on Truth Social saying it's inconceivable that President Biden would seek another term based on his record. Inconceivable. I don't know. Pretty conceivable to me. What's inconceivable is that you would even consider Trump running for another term in office after January 16th and the debacle that was your presidency and so many legal cases against you. That's inconceivable. But okay, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to say. It's yeah, it's pretty crazy. Um yeah, a lot of people joining the show. Thank you so much. Nikki is at her second job. She will be back on Thursday and Friday of this week. So she's in training. And so we're very proud of her. You know, we have to do what we have to do to keep the mortgage paid. So that's cool. Uh, that's what we're going to talk about a little later, Perry Joe Jim Bob. I do have a reporter from the California Politico Bureau, Camille, who's going to come talk to us about what's happening in the Sierra and the snowmelt and the potential for flooding in places like Tulare, Stanislaus. So we'll talk about what that means for them. The governor is supposed to go and talk about possible solutions. So we'll talk about what they're asking him for and what the state may be able to provide, and whether or not we can stave off a catastrophe, whether we can save any of this water. I don't know. Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Trevor, and to all the people. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for being here. John says Sacramento Valley has 90s weather forecasted from Thursday to Sunday. That's right. That's why that water is rushing downhill. It's a big concern. Very big concern. Good afternoon to you as well. Oh, thank you, Deidre. We appreciate that. $25 from Lozica Concrete. Thank you so much. And Rick as well. You guys are so kind. We really appreciate it. It's the way that we're going to be able to keep doing the show via the contributions. So we really appreciate anything you can do. And again, you can find the Patreon and the PayPal links at the NikkiMaduroShow.com. And of course, as you can see, that super chat is live. So thank you for that. So what did you think about the president's video? What did you think about Biden running again? Floyd's Key says, I'm concerned about Biden's age. He's 80 now, but Trump should not have a damn thing to say. Yeah, if you're talking about inconceivable, that's true. Vilma says, in the final analysis, if it's Trump versus Biden, I'll vote for Biden. I truly believe the Democratic Party should pass the torch to a younger generation. I guess the question is, who in the younger generation would step up that actually has a chance at winning? I mean, that's the key. Oh, we're talking about the missing space rover. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. Maybe. Yeah. Knit one, pearl one. Shut up, Trump. I wish he'd go away. Yeah. Mr. John wants Michelle Obama to run. She said she never would. She said that. Gretchen Whitmer, says Amy Brown. Beth says not Gavin, but who? Pete Buttigieg, Lisa Morris writes. A lot of good ideas, but I know that polls are, not always accurate, but I haven't seen any that show a younger Democrat being able to beat Trump. I just don't know. Perry Joe Jim Bob writes, 82-year-old Biden or Trump? What is a poor independent moderate to do? Not Trump. No, because there's no moderation there at all. That's an extreme. Oprah for president. I don't think we're going to see an Oprah presidency. I don't think so. Would you, though, if you were Oprah and you had all the money in the world and you could just now kick back and do an interview that interested you once every 6 months if you felt like it? I know she's running her empire. But is that what you would do would you put the stress on yourself? Maybe you're concerned about, leaving behind a legacy or what have you. Maybe you're just really ambitious. I can't imagine if I had all that money that I would do anything except park myself on some cabana beach chair in Maui and just enjoy. Nick says, is Pete running again? Not officially. I haven't seen it. How old is John Rothman? You want a Rothman presidency? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Deidre says, Jeff Jackson, congressman from North Carolina, an up-and-coming rock star. Okay. David says, everyone says it should be someone other than Biden until you start throwing out other names. That's kind of what I'm saying, David. It's like that the idea of passing the torch to a younger generation seems really great, right? It seems like, yeah, we'd love to get someone in there, Obama-ish, Kennedy-ish, younger with a family. But then you look around and you're thinking, who? And could they actually win? Because that's going to be key. Can't have a Trump back in there. Good afternoon. Nikki Maduro Show. Yes, you're what? Well, of course. We want to be there. This show is really important to us, and we want to be with you. So we're going to keep going for it. Vilma says, I don't believe anyone will challenge Biden this time around. Kamala Harris will have to watch Biden's back if he is reelected. Wes writes, if the economy is good and you can keep the focus on gun violence and abortion, maybe. President Pete, Trevor and Concord is all for President Pete. The thing about Pete Buttigieg is he just is I think I find him to be so eloquent as a speaker, and the ideas that he has to be so good. I like him a lot. So I wouldn't be disappointed in a President Pete. Um, I wish Newsom would run, says Cheryl. I think he wishes he was running too. He's doing some kind of presidentially things, right? Going around to other states, trying to protect Democrats in the red states. I don't think he's going to challenge Biden. Or would he challenge Harris? I don't think so. No, he's got to wait. He's going to have to wait. And does he come with too much baggage, you know, in California? I don't know how he plays in the rest of the country, even if he plays well here. Mario says it's sad that this great country has nothing better to offer. I really don't want Biden or Trump. I don't mind Biden. I mean, I don't think the country is in a bad way right now, other than all the shootings everywhere. I wish something could be done about that. So, John writes, we actually have a Kennedy running for president. He's a crazy nut job, Kennedy, though. Yeah, no, he's not the Kennedy we're looking for. Not at all. So, what is President Biden going to run on? Says John. I think he, if you saw the video earlier, runs on all the things that need to be done. The end of the slogan said, let's finish the job. He knows he has more work to do. So I think that he runs on his successes thus far and the work that still needs to be done. President Katie Porter, vice president equals her whiteboard, says Jim Liu. A lot of love for Pete Buttigieg, Terabyte MC. Pete isn't inspiring, however. I like him and I think he'd be capable. Why isn't he inspiring, though? Former member of the military, right? Who served our country, loves the country, has a family, he's smart. Lisa says Newsom has great ideas but wouldn't win. Heather says I really want to like Newsom, but this PG&E association really bothers me. It bothers me too, but when you look at how everyone has something wrong, I mean, look at President Biden and the I know he's apologized for it, but the old video of the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings and how Anita Hill was treated. They all have something that's like, I don't really like that about you. So I guess, I mean, you're never going to find the perfect candidate. So it's always the lesser of, the evils, I think. Can we forgive him the PG&E thing, the rubber stamping of the PG&E money grab? Kim says Gavin is not popular in many states. Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think he epitomizes what it means to be, the dirty word, the liberal Democrat from California. Judy says, I don't think Newsom could win a presidential election because he's too liberal. Some of us would like that, but you have to consider the whole country. Yeah. I mean, I can't see Newsom winning in pick a red state, Kentucky. They would lose their mind with the Newsom presidency. Karen, this may be the first time I've disagreed with you, says Trevor. I think Pete is very inspiring. Yeah, you know what? You know what I like about him? Other than, that some people find his sexuality upsetting, there's really no controversy. I mean, there was the thing when he was mayor that African Americans said he wasn't strong enough regarding police shootings or police brutality. But he doesn't really have a lot of scandal. He's just mellow, easygoing guy. There's no craziness, there's no big reveal. He's just, so if you're saying, he needs to be inspiring like this, or if he's just like he's up here, but he's just even keel. Isn't that okay? I kind of want that. I just want someone to not have a lot of drama and do well. Uh Biden has incontinence, does he? I haven't heard that. He'll be running all the time. I don't think he has incontinence. I haven't heard that. He actually looks pretty strong and pretty healthy, but who knows what's going on. Beware of third-party candidates who could cause president win with less than 50% of the vote, and a dictator, Trump, or similar, to steal the election. Hmm. I guess we'll have to keep our eyes open on that. I haven't seen any real viable third-party candidate pop in. Heather says I find Pete quite inspiring. Karen says maybe it's been a while since the debates. I haven't seen much of Pete. Well, he's the transportation secretary, right? So we heard a lot from him during that toxic train derailment in Ohio. He was pressed into service and had to go to Ohio. He was holding meetings and talking about how the federal government would respond. So that was his most recent. I think the most recent story I saw about him. Katie says, "No Trump. I like Biden and I trust him. Anything can happen to a given person at any given time." That's true, right? Even the youngest candidate could get hit by a Mack truck. I also like Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island, but he's not well known. Cool though. Thank you. Cindy says Newsom and PG&E make me angry, but better than anything Republicans have got. Another vote for Pete. Thank you, Susan. Nick says Pete's a complete package. Too bad he could never be president in this country. Why, Nick? Do you think we're not ready for a gay president? You think we're ready for a female president? I thought so when Hillary ran. I thought this is it. This is the moment. I think I mean, at the time, we didn't know what a Trump presidency would mean. I think Hillary knew, but we didn't know, or I didn't know. And so I think I took her loss really as a knockdown against women, you know? I thought this was our moment. And I thought, well, yeah, America's not ready for a woman to be president. And so I wondered also if America's ready for a gay president. So I think you might be right about that. And I feel sad that we're not ready, that we're not there yet. Liz says Jamie Raskin. We saw a lot of him during the January 16th hearings. Newsom would do fine, says John Slade. What about Beto O'Rourke, says Walnut Creek Adult Softball. Yeah. I don't think Beto wins though. I don't see that happening. PG&E issues too big. Too many lives and homes lost, and Newsom hasn't done anything about it. We need a younger Bernie Sanders or a clone. Cindy says Pete Buttigieg is a corporate Democrat and bad handling of railroads as he favors corporations allows to do what they want. Hmm. I hadn't heard that he favored allowing corporations to do what they want. I thought he was in favor of more regulations that the Trump administration rolled back, that he wanted to put more regulations in place so things like this don't happen again. That's what I had heard, Cindy. I hadn't heard what the way you said it there. Newsom should run for Congress or the Senate one day. Well, he might have to appoint somebody. Maybe he appoints himself. How does that play out? I don't know how it plays out. Yeah. Um, yeah, some agreement from Karen. Yeah, it was the Trump administration that relaxed the regulations on the trains. Yeah, that's exactly right. Chris is very dark in saying the banks and the corporations pick all of our politicians. That's very something out of a movie. I hope you're not right. I hope it's us. I hope that we're the people that pick. Cheryl says when Clinton was president, I heard from numerous people Hillary was actually running the presidency. Lots of Hillary haters. Matthew Iaconis says Pete is level-headed and addresses issues in a calm manner. Love him. Yeah, I love the calm. And I love the smart. How come we can't get into the smart? We saw people say, you want a president you could have a beer with. And so we ended up with, I mean, Clinton was smart, but he was able to speak dumb. Then you had Bush Jr., who I mean, every time he spoke, I was like, that's our president? Obama was pretty smart. And then you had Trump, who every time he spoke, I was like, that's our president? Can we just get somebody smart in there? I want someone smarter than the average bear. I want the smartest of the smart and the best of the best. Is it too much to ask? Nick writes, too many voters with their heads stuck in the past that believe being gay is a sin. I just can't believe that would preclude someone from being president, especially if that was, you know, if that was our best candidate. Who cares who they sleep with? Why is that our business? I just don't care. Do you think that there's some type of thought that being gay makes you weak? That, you're wimpy because you're gay, you're not a real man? Because I don't think that's true at all. I mean, if have you been to a gym in San Francisco? They're all in shape, they're muscular, they're big. There's a lot of gay men who you're like, the opposite of wimpy. I don't even know if that's a thing. I just feel like it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter what his sexuality is. If he's the best candidate, he's the best candidate. But I don't think a lot of people think that way. And I don't know if America's ready for a woman or a gay man. Kind of a sad situation. So we'd been talking earlier about the snow melt coming down from the Sierra and the dangers that it could pose. It's a pretty scary situation. On one hand, we needed all that rain and the snow to get us out of an historic drought. And that, for the most part, seems to have worked for now. Would have been so much better if we could have saved all that water, right? Instead of letting it run off. But now we've got this massive snowpack that's going to melt, and looks like we're in some serious trouble with this. I feel scared about what's going to come, especially for the people that are in the Sierra foothills, in areas that could be seriously flooded or impacted by this. So I wanted to reach out to someone who's done some wonderful reporting on this. And I found Camille, and I don't know if I can say her last name right, Von Kanel with Politico, who's done some wonderful reporting. And I wanted to welcome her to the show. Camille, welcome to the Nikki Maduro Show.
Thanks for having me. And you got my name mostly right, so thank you.
Did I? Von Kanel? How do you say it? Von Kanel. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. I was reading the Politico story from the California PM report yesterday, and it talked about the dangers of flooding. So can you tell us what's at risk? Because I know this is kind of imminent.
Right. So I think this is kind of a slow moving disaster because we have such a giant snowpack in the mountains. It's a 200% overall average throughout the Sierra. And in some regions in the Southern Sierra in particular, it's at 300 or even 400% of average. So that's a lot more snow than we're used to. And it's going to start to melt as the days get longer and the snow gets hot. So all that is going to come downstream. So there's kind of multiple scenarios for flooding. One is upstream flooding. So all that snow flowing into rivers in the Sierra foothills that you mentioned, even in the Sierra, and that could just make the rivers overflow their banks. And then there's downstream flooding. So this is more like in the Central Valley, in the Tulare County, Kern County, Kings County, even here I'm in Sacramento, so Sacramento County. All that river first gets captured in reservoirs, and then if the reservoirs are full, they'll have to let the water continue downstream, and eventually, if there's not enough mechanisms to channel that water away from homes, it could flood homes and orchards. So it's sort of like everyone's kind of looking up at the foothills and the Sierra and the mountains and being like, oh my gosh, all that snow is going to come to us, but it's going to be kind of this slow moving disaster. And it depends how hot it gets and how quickly it gets hot.
Can we talk a little bit about Tulare? Because there was once a lake, if I'm getting this right. It was once a lake, and apparently it's now a lake again. but it's not supposed to be?
Well, it depends who you ask. It
Okay.
is a lake. It was at one point the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi. It was kind of the seasonal lake that popped up in Kings County, Tulare, Kern County, that area near Corcoran, or near what is now Corcoran. And the lake was drained in the 18th and 19th century to make way for farmland, because that's a very soil rich area of the state. So it hasn't really been a lake since then, except during very wet seasons. And this year, the lake has come back bigger than it's ever been. It's currently covering 330,000 acre feet of water. So there's, I haven't been down there myself, but based on the pictures, you can see waves of water kind of lapping up against telephone poles. Some of the
Whoa.
orchards have been flooded, which means that the trees are asphyxiated if they're underwater, and so they die. Most of the Tulare Lake area is just kind of open land. So there hasn't been tons of destruction from the lake itself currently, but as it keeps growing, because it'll get closer to communities and towns around there, including the city of Corcoran, which has 22,000 people. So that's kind of a big concern right now.
So I know that the governor is headed that way. What do the people there want him to do? What are they asking for?
Yeah, that's right. The governor is probably there right now. He's
Mhm.
gonna make an announcement of some kind at 2:30 down there. He's touring the flooding probably right now as we speak. So the main thing people want, I think, is money for flood protection. So the state has already deployed some of its emergency personnel there, excuse me, handing out sandbags, just kind of basic flood fighting.
Mhm.
And longer term, a lot of the levees that protect communities, especially the city of Corcoran, are not quite tall enough to protect the town from this onslaught of water. So since we know there's all this snow that's going to come down, the water is
Yep.
going to keep increasing. So the local people there, with the help of state and federal officials, are building up the levee that surrounds Corcoran. But it's still, the funding source for that is still not quite clear. Like, some people are fronting the money and they're not sure if the state's going to pay them back. So that's the main request that I've heard from, and I've talked to county supervisors down there in Kings County, and that's what they said they want most, is a commitment of funding from the state government to repair that levee in preparation of what could be massive flooding in May and June.
I guess the question then would be, is it's too late to protect them now though, because all the money is in the world isn't going to build levee fast enough. I was a listener was saying today, a viewer was saying it's going to be 90 degrees from Thursday of this week to Sunday in the Sacramento area. So it's heating up fast. This water's coming down. The flooding is imminent. We heard the predictions of flooding within days. And so I guess it's is it too late for money to make a difference right now? And is that kind of, more looking toward the future rather than preventing it this time around?
I think it depends which area of the state you're talking about. I'm not looking forward to 90-degree days here in the Sacramento Valley, but there's no snow to melt around here,
Yeah.
so maybe we'll be okay. Um, the so the state officials are predicting flooding upstream in some of the rivers in the Sierra this week, particularly the Merced River is at flood stage. So some of the trails in Yosemite are going to be closed.
Hmm.
But the state climatologist on a call with reporters yesterday said that there's no imminent risk of devastating flooding downstream in the valley, because all
Okay.
that snow melt is going to be captured by the reservoirs still. The reservoirs aren't at past capacity. So dam managers are preparing for this water to come down. They've already let out quite a lot of water over the past weeks and months. So the system is going to be able to absorb the snow melt this week, is what the state climatologist said. So that, say, the city of Corcoran is probably not going to be underwater this week.
Mhm.
But, as spring and summer continue, the reservoirs aren't going to be able to absorb that water. And so downstream communities may be impacted as well as the upstream communities.
When you talk about having to release water, it's such a bummer to hear it because, you would have hoped that during the drought, at least to prepare for the wetter years, we would have built some type of infrastructure, more reservoirs, more tanks, more something where when they release water, they wouldn't just dump it, that it would actually go somewhere where we could save it and keep it, and it would make a difference or somehow protect us from future drought years. Is that what we're looking at? More of a release of water? Have we done nothing to help, ourselves out in future years where we might not have this type of snowpack?
Right. Yeah. The Kings County supervisor that I spoke with yesterday said something along the lines of, "We've prayed for water for so long, and now we just have to maintain it." And it's hard for people, especially who have had to deal with drought restrictions, to
Right.
see water flowing to the ocean. But so, I mean, there's a few things that are underway to try to capture some of that water. I think the most interesting is this idea of replenishing groundwater reservoirs. So, over decades and decades, farmers and city users have pumped so much water out of the ground that in some places the ground itself has even started to subside. And there's more capacity to store water underground than there is above ground in
Mhm.
California. So there's this movement that's sort of coalescing to move this water underground, but it's not very easy. Depends on the quality of the soil. You need some infrastructure. In some places, you need injection wells to move the water underground. Doesn't just percolate easily. So the state has kind of sped up the permitting process to do those types of projects, but I'd say it's not at full capacity yet. It's that groundwater recharge is only kind of starting to be a bigger thing. In terms of dams and reservoirs, and there's only so many places in California you can still build a dam,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, those places, the there's a Sites Reservoir above Sacramento here that's been in the works for years and years and years, and it's been delayed because of local opposition, concerns about impact to fish and the
Mhm.
habitat there, and construction still hasn't started. So it's going to be a while before we see those types of big infrastructure projects deliver, even the ones that are already underway. But certainly, this is a huge discussion in
Yeah.
Sacramento and just among normal people who,
Right.
don't, who are just watching what's happening. Yeah.
I was reading in the, Politico California PM report yesterday that some people are upset, one specific Assemblyman, Devin Mathis, about maybe private landowners having to pay for levee construction or, uh, damage mitigation. He says the state and feds need to step up here and stop relying on private property owners to fund these types of things. Is that how landowners are feeling, like they have no help? And so they better just step up and do it themselves?
Um, well, certainly when there's a flood coming your way, you're not going to wait for the state to come in to protect your
Right.
property. So there's certain steps that people are taking, and around that levee in Corcoran to protect the community, and the state and then the feds are participating partly, but again, there's just this huge question mark around the funding, and the private funders in that particular instance have not been um, they don't really want to talk with the media about it. So
Right.
I can't share too many details about that
Yeah.
particular case, but that's something that Devin Mattis is very passionate about. He's moderating discussions between local people in Corcoran and the state to get some sort of funding promise. He's a Republican, so he doesn't have that much sway in the capital, but he's advocating strongly, and the state senator from that area, who is a Democrat, is also advocating for funding. So that's the representatives in Sacramento who are trying to get state funding.
So I've seen a few warnings from state officials saying this summer people are going to really have to watch it when they're at lakes or rivers. Things are going to be, the current's going to be moving faster. It's going to be deeper than you thought. It's going to be different this year because of all the snow melt. Can you kind of expand on that a little?
Yeah. I mean, I'll take the example of the American River because it runs through Sacramento and I go there multiple times a week. It's been flooded this entire winter. Every year in the summer, there are drownings in that river. And
Yeah.
you can just imagine that happening, unfortunately, frequently if the river is rushing and it's flooded, it's overflowing its banks. So at the state officials are telling people to follow their local emergency officials guidance. There's pretty good data on the California Department of Water Resources website that shows different rivers and their flood stages, and how much water is flowing through different rivers, and forecasts for the next week or month. So it's worth checking out that data. Certainly it's a concern, and I'll have to be careful. But
Yeah.
I know whitewater rafters are probably really excited.
Well, it's going to be an interesting summer. Thank you so much, Camille Von Cannell.
Yes, that was great.
Yes, I got it right. From Politico. I hope you'll come back and talk with us in the future. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for your reporting. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So that's what we're looking forward to as we head into the summer and we head into this snow melt. It's going to be interesting. I'm frozen in time again. Look at that. Always frozen in time with me. I don't know why. I don't know. They do this to me all the time. I don't know what they do. So yeah, John writes, a lot of people are going to be drowning this spring and summer. It's a given. I think so too, because people aren't going to understand that it's different, that everything is going to be different about this season ahead of us. The water's going to be colder. It's going to be moving faster. It's going to be deeper. You gotta be careful. It's frustrating to see that uh, we're just dumping this water. We're just dumping it. Mm. So, yeah, I don't know if you have any comments or any thoughts on what's ahead. John writing, Yosemite Valley will be fantastic this spring if you can get there. A little flooding going on there right now, according to Camille. Mark was talking about that earlier as well. We've got some flooding concerns there. Ms. Organic says higher water line means more things that you can get snagged on near the shore. Those are things people don't think about, you know, dangers that people just don't. They go thinking it's going to be a great day by the river, going to be a great day swimming in the reservoir, and they just don't think about things like that. So, yeah. Changing topics a little bit here. There is a plan to build a Chinese owned factory in northern Michigan. And now the opponents to this plant say it's a national security risk. So this is in the Green Charter Township, which is a really small community near Grand Rapids, Michigan. And they are protesting this electric vehicle battery plant. They're calling it a big mistake to let the Chinese company come in and build this thing. The protesters came after Democrats in a Michigan Senate committee approved $175 million in state funds to support this project. We're trying as a country to support electric vehicles to get that done. And now you've got this Chinese company coming in, and the concerns, I don't know if it's a valid concern that it's a national security risk, or if that's just a way to say, uh, we don't want it. It's another way to say we don't want it. But it's interesting. that Chinese company would be allowed to come in here and do that. I don't know. Another story to talk to you about. I don't know a lot of Harry Potter fans out there in the audience, but J.K. Rowling has got some backlash she's feeling over the TV adaptation of Harry Potter. They're turning this into a show. Max, HBO Max, they're just calling it Max now, announced that they're turning Harry Potter into a TV show, and J.K. Rowling is going to be the executive producer of this. So you've got some activists pledging to boycott the show over the author's controversial opinions on gender and transgenderism. Rowling apparently joking on Twitter she's taken the precaution of laying in a large stock of champagne. That's rather glib, not really addressing the concerns. So there's a backlash against her, but I think there's also a backlash against having Harry Potter be a TV show. Would you not watch the show because of her views on transgender or gender issues? Would that preclude you from being a Harry Potter fan because you don't like some political or moral opinions that the author who wrote the book has? Did I say it wrong? I said Rowling. Is it Rowling? Rowling. My apologies if I got it wrong. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It's one of those debates about, can you separate the artist from the art? And I think in some cases you can. In this case, it seems like Harry Potter has more of a life of its own, and the author of Harry Potter kind of stands in the background where the story takes the forefront, so it's easier to disconnect the two from each other. I don't know. Regarding the flooding situation that California faces imminently, John Smith says fire departments have talked about additional training for swift river rescue to prepare for the onslaught of flooding due to the snowmelt. They need it. They need it. Flo writes, Rowling's champagne comment also almost sounds like Marie Antoinette's "let them eat cake" quote, right? It really does. I mean, it's so out of touch. It's like also like Melania's jacket that she wore. It's this message where you're saying, I don't really care about your criticism. I don't really care what you have to say. Instead of listening, it's I push all that away and I don't care. That's not really listening to your audience or listening to concerns. The right way to handle it is, hey, I hear your concerns, and we can agree to disagree. I'm sorry you feel that way, whatever. If she's stuck on that opinion, and that's fine. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. And Stars writes, what are her views on transgender and gender issues? I think she's made some comments regarding transgender that were not kind, and not affirming of someone's ability to be who they want to be. She has said in the past, she retweeted this op-ed piece that took issue with the word women and called them people who menstruate. She said, I'm sure there used to be, the op-ed said, I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Women, wimpund, womund, she wrote. So she's kind of poking fun at transgender women. It upset a lot of people when she did that. She did say, I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, she said, my life has been shaped by being female, and I don't believe it's hateful to say so. That there's a difference between a trans woman and a biological woman. Uh, Apparently, she published a post on her website that had this term that I hadn't heard before called TERF Wars, TERF, and that stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. She said, "It's not easy to write, but I feel like I have to explain myself on an issue surrounded by toxicity. I write this without any desire to add toxicity. For people who don't know, last December, she said, I tweeted my support for Maya Forstater, a tax specialist who lost her job for what were deemed transphobic tweets. She took her case to an employment tribunal, asking the judge to rule on whether a philosophical belief that sex is determined by biology is protected by law. The judge ruled that it was not. So Rowling says she became interested in trans issues while researching a character that she's writing, and she has a problem with trans activism. So on one hand, she doesn't want trans people discriminated against, but she is not shy about saying she believes there's a difference between a biological woman and a trans woman. So I think that, if to answer your question, sorry for the long-winded end stars, that those are her views on it, and it's it's created a lot of backlash, a lot of hurt feelings. Heather says, when the artist with problematic views is still alive and can presumably be educated and reasoned with, but still refuses, I have a harder time separating them from their art. It's a really good point. Because you look at, you know, and I know it's not the same thing, but you look at founding fathers or people that, I don't know, didn't stand up against slavery, or I can't even make excuses for those people, but I can say that it was a different time, and their views were the accepted views. They were the norm. It doesn't mean that people in their hearts knew what was right from wrong and did what was wrong because it was financially beneficial to them. But I agree with your statement, Heather, that now we know better. That's not the norm. That view is not the norm. So there's something to be said for that. Flo says, I love the brilliant Potter books and films. That's the thing, is the stories are so good. The stories are so good and so creative. Kim says she's the one who disguised her name to sell books and also writes books under the same Robert Galbraith name. She seems as though she has some identity issues. Flo says, again, I love the brilliant Potter books and films, but her trans views are disturbing to me. Can you give support to and discriminate against the same community? Because that's what it seems like she's doing. You know, with one hand, I support your right to live as you want to live. On the other hand, but you're not the same as me. You're not the same as me. I guess there's something to be said for, yes, there are differences. I don't know if we necessarily need to point them out. And I don't know if trying to come to the defense of a someone who's causing pain is the best move for her. When she talks about, researching the character for a book, coming across this woman who, is writing about and making comments about that are transphobic. She said multiple things they're just not right. So a lot of people, I guess, found in the Harry Potter story comfort in a lot of the characters, and it's been hard for people to then realize that the woman who wrote the book doesn't necessarily have their back in that way. Harry Potter himself, that's by the way, who just became a new father. He, Daniel Radcliffe, says that he came out a couple years ago and said uh, he appreciates her, Rowling, for the work and affecting the course of his life, and he is someone that has worked with the Trevor Project, and as a human being felt compelled to say transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and the dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise on this subject matter. According to the Trevor Project, 78% of transgender and non-binary youth reported being the subject of discrimination due to their gender identity. He says, Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, it's clear that we need to do more to support transgender and non-binary people, not to invalidate their identities and cause them further harm. So saying that there's a difference between a trans woman and a biological woman invalidates their identities. And I think that's why people are so hurt. That's why people are feeling, so sad about all of this. Anonymous says Radcliffe and Watson are scared of getting canceled. They are not rich like J.K. Rowling, and they have to be careful. I don't think so. I don't think that Daniel Radcliffe said that because of money, because he's scared of getting canceled. I think he has done work with the Trevor Project and believes that it's the right thing to do. I really think that's true. Lori says, I think there's a lot of nuance in this issue. It has only recently become something people openly discuss. I think we need to give some time for people to adjust. Right now, if not attacking, be flexible. Be flexible. I think we've seen a lot of, should we not let trans women compete in women's sports? I have some feelings about that because I don't necessarily know that it's fair to allow trans women, especially if they're biologically male, went through puberty, are stronger, have a leg up on then all the women's competition. I don't know if there's fairness involved in that. Is that discriminatory to say? Because I don't want to be discriminatory. Is it discriminatory to say there are differences between trans women and biological women? And is that invalidating? I'm asking you in the chat. Having lived life only as a woman and, been mansplained to, faced the, I don't want to say discrimination, but the certain sexual harassment sometimes, catcalls, what have you. These are things that I think are uniquely a woman's experience, similar to that I could never really understand what a person of color has gone through. The racism and their experience is uniquely their own. So I don't know if then, even if you've always felt like you're a woman, but you didn't, you haven't lived a lifetime in those shoes, if we have the same experience or not. I welcome you to the sisterhood, but I don't know if there's not a difference. And I don't want that to be invalidating because I want to support everyone's right to be who they are. Is that what J.K. Rowling is saying as well? Wes says it's not discriminatory. They probably need their own group for competition. It's going to get to that point that it's unfair. Nick says, yep, trans in sports is complicated. Lori says this sort of thing has colored a lot of opinions as well as extreme views from the right. We need to give a little time for society to equilibrate. If not, calling for hurting someone, allow opinions. Yeah. She says this is regarding the sports things. Cheryl says, I don't think it's discrimination, Kim. I think we are individual. What I don't want to say, though, is that trans women are not women. And if we point out any differences between the two, I don't want it to seem discriminatory. I want it to be a discussion about our differences and about how we better understand each other. If trans women are part of the sisterhood of women, then I think we should be able to talk as as a group about our experiences and the differences in those experiences. Karen says making an effort to have empathy with other groups of people goes a long way. J.K. Rowling did, though. She said, I support everyone's right to live who they want to live, and I'd march right alongside you. And then she turned around and said they're not really biological women, right? And called out all their differences. Chris says, if you've never been someone or something, how do you know you feel like one? I'm not trans, so I don't know that. I just know what I've read and what I've heard trans people say when I've tried to speak with them and understand the situation. It feels like they've grown up in the wrong body. It feels like they're not who they were born as, that they're not in the right gender, that they've lived life not feeling like they ever really belonged or that they ever really fit in or that they ever really were themselves or able to be themselves. And I don't know how you can judge them if you never grew up feeling like they grew up. Does that make sense? I hope so. Mike Hendricks says, Kim, I almost always agree with you, but I can't understand the people who feel that a man who is transitioned to a woman is the same as a biological female. There needs to be some middle ground here. Mike, I don't think we disagree as much as you think we do. I feel like, I feel like I don't want to be invalidating to people. I don't want to put more hurt on people that have faced a lifetime of people saying they're not who they feel like they are. That is what I'm saying. At the same time, as I just said, living my whole life as a woman, I don't feel that someone who's newly a woman has the same experiences. So I feel there are some differences. But again, that can be invalidating. So I have very mixed feelings about my own feelings about all of this. It's really hard to want to be understanding and empathetic and understand. And that's really the truth, is seeking to understand other people without being hurtful about it. And I do agree with you saying there needs to be middle ground. Thanks, Mike, for that comment. Karen says, are we women primarily because of our physiology or because of our brains? It's a whole package, isn't it, Karen? Who's to say that the brain of a trans woman isn't a female brain? And that's why they've felt the way they felt their whole life. I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about being trans to know biologically how that works. But I would say we're primarily female because of everything, because of the way our body works, the coursing of the hormones through our veins. You feel it during, you know, I can tell you my daughter at 13 is hormone city. Felt the coursing of hormones during pregnancy, after pregnancy, you know, as you leave toward the next stage of life, hormones. It's biological. It's our brains, it's everything. We're wired that way. I don't know. Anonymous says trans women are just that, trans women. No? If they were women, they wouldn't need the preemptive trans label. I'm just a cis hetero, brown privileged. Oh, I don't want to say that. Well, um, I I I don't know. That maybe there are some trans women who don't say trans. They just say, I'm a woman. Fine. Empathy is the key for all. I agree. Daniel says Trump had a bit of baggage. Oh, this is a different regarding a different thing. Yes. Cargo hold of baggage indeed. You certainly don't know how you certainly know how you don't feel. You can certainly know how you don't feel. I think you mean you could certainly know if you were born male that you don't feel male, you know how you don't feel. Right. It is a complex issue. And that's the thing, Cheryl, when you're talking about something so complicated, you how you really run the risk of stepping on people's feelings. When you have a big profile like J.K. Rowling, I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. I say Rowling, is it Rowling? You know, you shouldn't be surprised if you open your mouth about this complex issue, if you hurt people's feelings and if you have a backlash. That's just the way it is. And that she seems to keep talking about it shows that she doesn't care about hurt feelings. That's how I feel. Nick says the only way to have a chance to understand it is to have a conversation with a trans person. I agree with that. And also, I think it makes it less like, I don't know, scary because you realize the person is just a person. They're just a person with feelings. Really, that's it. We all have that same core, regardless of gender. Cheryl says it's like black and white people are different in looks, but equally human beings. Of course they are. Um, Chris writes some offensive things. Sorry, Chris, but not putting those up. Anonymous says, I didn't. Oh, yeah. I'm glad that you're being facetious, but still, I don't want to, you know, there are words I won't say, words that people will find offensive and that make me feel oogie saying, and I just won't do it. Cheryl says, I see male and female identity in a young age with my little grandkids. I think, interestingly, gender and roles are much more fluid when you talk about children. Some boys, many boys, play with dolls, naturally play with dolls. Some girls play with trucks and want nothing to do with the princess dresses, and that's fine. Trying to shove them into what you think they should be playing with, that's the problem. It's okay at those ages, and then at some point, it becomes not okay. Floyd's Key, I wonder respectfully, reincarnation, what if this is the case? Only wonder, don't know for sure. When you talk about reincarnation, you mean being reincarnated as a different gender than your previous life? I don't know. Daniel says the problem is half the country is absolutely ready for a woman or a gay candidate. Oh, talking about the presidency. The other half is still a bit in the Middle Ages. You need everybody on board. Trevor and Concord. Here's the things people say: be a man, be ladylike, masculine, effeminate, all just sociological constructs. And Trevor, find myself saying it. To my daughter, if she burps or something, I'll say, "Oh, that's real ladylike." Am I putting labels on her when I say that? We're shopping for an 8th grade graduation dress. She's like, I don't know if I want to wear a dress. Am I putting, labels on her, kind of making her feel like she needs to be a certain way? I don't want to do that. Lori says, whatever you are, imagine if you were told by everyone in society, no, you're this opposite thing. If no matter how you protested, you're told, no, you're this. It's hard to imagine. Some people can't get there mentally, Lori. I think, and I'll use you as an example. If I told you, no, Chris, you're not a man. No, Chris, you're not. And no matter how many times you said, yes, yes, I am. Yes, I really am. Well, I'm sorry, Chris, but society says you're not. How demoralizing and hurtful that would be. But I bet you have a hard time kind of doing that mental exercise. Maybe not. I could be wrong. If so, I'm sorry. My bad. Amy says transfer a big people always have the most transfer transfer a big people always have the most to see about transgender people. You correct yourself. Thank you, because I didn't understand. Transphobic people always have the most to say about transgender people. Because they don't see it as a big deal, because they're not afraid of hurting people's feelings. If you're transphobic, you just think, whatever, they're the crazies, right? They're the weirdos. You don't care about treating them as human beings with dignity. That's why, I think, Amy. Thank you for that. Sorry, I read it wrong. Kim writes, Mom did in-home daycare when I was a kid. There was a little girl we knew at the age of 2, leaned masculine, and we presumed that she was gay. She is. You're born that way. I always say, I won't be surprised if my kids come to me one day and say they're gay or trans or whatever. I mean, I think you have to assume the jury's out. Sometimes maybe it's obvious, sometimes maybe not. Maybe for whatever reason they've tried to hide it. I hope they don't feel like they have to hide from me, but wouldn't be the first time that a kid felt that way. Anonymous says reincarnated with different firmware, iOS female software into the male MacBook. Creative. I like the way you said it. Knit one, pearl one. There are people who have detransitioned. Some of them have had very sad backgrounds. Being trans was never their answer. There's always going to be that. But also, knit one, pearl one, there are people, and I would say probably most people who are trans legitimately are feeling like were born into the wrong body. I think you're always going to have people who are questioning or wondering or haven't done the psychological work on themselves to really understand who they are as people. And maybe that's what you end up with. I don't know. I am frozen again, Jefferson Graham. And hi, Jefferson Graham. Yes, I'm frozen. So I'm using the picture instead because I don't want to go out and leave everybody without anyone here. That would be a bummer. Knit one, pearl one says, yeah, Lori, ask any abused child. Believe me, they're told terrible things that they never were. And so I feel like it's important to support people. And if that means saying woman instead of trans woman, or if that means just welcoming people in without having to throw up a red flag when you discuss all the differences, because it hurts people and their heart because they've been through so much discrimination already, fine. That's fine. I always learn so much from you guys, though, and so many good ideas from you. Karen says, I think we're dealing with a lot of willful ignorance that we'll always have to fight against. I agree with that because I'll read your whole comment, but I agree with that because if you don't have a trans person in your life and you've never taken time to get to know someone who's trans, then it's much easier to just kind of put it off as a group of people you know, you have no connection with at all. And if you have no connection with them, then it's much easier to be ugly about it. Those people don't take the effort to re-examine their biases when they're told they are wrong. Again, because they have no connection. They don't have to. Imagine that. Chris is saying this is a manufactured controversy. I don't think so. I mean, if you're a trans person, it's not. If you're someone who's felt discriminated against, it's not. I think the manufactured controversy comes from the conservative side in states where they are banning transgender trans women from competing in women's sports, even though for the last 2 years they have had no such people trying to do so. That's what the manufactured controversy is. Maybe that's what you mean. Cindy says some protest too much regarding transphobic fear themselves, perhaps. It's always, I think thou doth protest too much, doesn't it? Eric says, Chris, you're right. It is manufactured. The authoritarians need a target, and the trans community is small enough to be easy to pick on. That's exactly right, Eric. You said it much better than I. J.E. Blake, not everyone that wants a delineation in women's sports, bathrooms, locker rooms is transphobic. Period. Some women still do not want to share private spaces with men. So that you said they're men means you don't understand that they are not men. In their mind, they are not men. In some cases, if they've gone through a switch or even partial switch, they don't feel like men in their bodies either. And since you're not I don't know if you're a woman, J.E. Blake. So let me tell you, as a woman, I don't care if a trans woman is in my bathroom. I seriously don't care. I also don't think trans women are out to hurt my children. I don't think they're groomers. I think they're people like you and me who are trying to find their place in the world. And that's it. So I disagree with your statement. I do think I can't say, maybe we can agree on this part, JE. is that I can say that not everyone who feels there may be a difference between being born biologically a woman and being a trans woman is transphobic. Because I think you can still seek to understand people and welcome people, even if you are questioning the differences between the two. I hope that makes sense, and I hope I didn't hurt anyone's feelings saying that. Amy writes, I actually agree with you there. Chris is completely manufactured fear from the right about drag queens and transgender people. Yes, that is the manufactured controversy. That's right. Because they're looking for a thing. They're looking for a thing to say that's going to freak people out and make people say, ah, it's them. They're the problem. That's what they're looking to do. We see it. We see you. We get it. I hope we get it. I get it. I hope you guys get it. I think you do. Oh, Judy must be in Petaluma or thereabouts. Just ordered some food from Mr. Pickles. Enjoy your sandwich. Heather says it's not up to any of us to dictate to someone else what they're supposed to feel or what their answer is. That's right. It's just about trying to understand. Yeah. I will add, writes J.E., it doesn't make a woman transphobic if a biological male cop is now responsible for strip searching her. Is she supposed to take it because he says he's a woman? That's the problem. I think you're manufacturing controversy here. Because if a trans woman had to strip search me for whatever reason, I wouldn't think to myself, oh, they're getting turned on by strip searching me. I would take them at face value that they're a trans woman. Yes, I would. And no, I would not be upset about it. I mean, a strip search isn't sexual in nature anyway. So look for what you got to look for and let's move on. That's a manufactured controversy. No. It's one of those things where it's like, really? That's going to happen? That's what you're picking out? Come on. Lori says there are also intersex people whose sex was chosen by a doctor or parents at birth. Ish. Watched a Katie Couric special from a few years ago. Super interesting. I did see that. How hard must that have been as a parent to be told you got to pick one and just take that gamble that you picked right? Karen says, it seems to me there are a lot more trans people and children than when I was younger back in the 60s and 70s. I don't mean to demean or criticize, but could it be something environmental? Karen, I think here's my thought on this, and I hope that it's not demeaning or critical as well. I think that because it's become accepted to question when you're, in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, whatever it may be, because it's become more of an accepted thing to be able to question yourself and really evaluate what your gender is instead of just, being a person who never really had to think about it and off you go. That more people are questioning it. Because they're questioning it doesn't mean that they're trans. It means they may come out the other side of the questioning period exactly the gender that they were born. Don't know. Maybe they changed their name for a while and eventually we'll change it back. But I think there's this kind of moment in time where it's become more kind of okay to ask the questions. And that may be why we're seeing more young people going through a phase where they're looking at themselves. It's valuable because I think a lot of people, in other generations never got the chance to question, never had the chance to really, never were allowed by society to question. And so if you're allowed to question, some people will be scared and say, oh, look at, now they're all going to be trans. But no, what's wrong with allowing a kid to go, who am I as a person? Not just who am I told I am, but who am I? And allowing them the grace to find that answer for themselves. And I would say that you're not going to see more trans people. You'll just see more trans people figuring it out earlier. And isn't that healthier for them? Seems like it to me. I appreciate that comment. I don't I don't know with this one, Karen. Because of toxicity, frogs are now able to reproduce regardless of sex, they're male and female. Okay. Yeah. Nick writes, people crack me up being afraid to share a bathroom with trans people. You have been for decades and you didn't even know it. It's true. And who cares? You know, I'm not in there paying attention to you. You're not in there paying attention to me. We're doing our business and moving on out. That's it. Lori says, if you've had the crap beaten out of you, you don't think it's manufactured. Again, yes, Lori, but I would argue that it's the opposition that's manufacturing. Cheryl says, I agree that I've had to gain understanding and acceptance. It's not that hard. Amy says, as a butch woman, I have a terribly tough time using women's gym locker rooms. The side eye I get is atrocious. Can't imagine how trans people feel. I'm sorry you have to go through that. Again, it's just doing your business. You're getting in there, changing, getting out, do your workout. Why does anybody have to ascribe anything else to it? You're just using the facility, doing your thing, and going out. Keep the side eye to yourself, people. Amy's cool. Nick says there are not necessarily more trans people now than in the past. There's more acceptance now than there was then. Yes. John writes, where's Nikki working and what is she doing? Nikki has a second job at another radio station because we need to make ends meet. We'll keep the two separate, but just know that she is in training. So she is going to be training this week, again tomorrow, and then she'll be back with us on Thursday and on Friday as well. So thank you, John Woodward, for sticking with us, even though we're going through some transition periods. But again, we want to keep the show going and be here for you. Ms. Organic writes, at times I'm envious of the beautiful trans women. I'm telling you, there's some trans women who look more hot, womanly than I ever did or will in this lifetime. I just don't spend time looking super girly, but they sure do. And the result is usually stunning. I agree. There's some people where trans women you look at and you think that is absolutely not fair. Right? Ron says, if we're honest, women are the only ones that can go into the wrong bathroom. Men know better, but if you've been at a concert or a game, we all know women will bogart their way into the men's room, no issue. I just don't have an issue with bathrooms in general. Whatever. Unless you're like leering at people in the bathroom, standing around looking all creepy, I don't care what bathroom you use. J.E. The manufactured controversy is that there wasn't one 3 or 4 years ago, and suddenly biological males are breaking records in women's sports and in their locker rooms. That's the controversy. Is it though? Are we talking about one or two athletes? One or two athletes, and then all of a sudden, that's the controversy that's picked up on in all the red states that don't even have this issue to deal with and are now coming up with laws and making a big to-do and deal out of it, even though they don't even have to deal with the issue. That's what I'm saying, J.E. Yeah. Amy says the only reason I think there are more trans people these days is just because social media shows it's just how many are out there. I don't know, Amy. I feel like it's more acceptable to question. You know, when you grow up being told you are this and you will not question this, the only way to be successful is to get married and have babies. You never are able to question yourself. You're never able to live, to even ask the questions to figure out who you really are. And now that you are able to ask those questions and that people are more accepting of, being who you are, maybe that has led to an increase, or maybe it's just led to an increase in questioning and there's still, statistically the same number of trans people there always have been. And you're welcome. I mean, JE, of course I want to read your comments as long as you state things in a respectful manner. I want you as part of the conversation. I understand you're a dissenting opinion and that you and I disagree, but looking at the way you disagree, and that's kind of what we're talking about yesterday, is knowing the argument of your opponent is very important, if not only to understand where you're coming from, but to kind of solidify my own feelings as well. So it's not that you have a dissenting opinion. I think you're allowed that. You're allowed to feel how you feel. Absolutely. But being respectful about it and trying not to be hurtful about it. That's how you pardon me, that's how you enter into the conversation and have a discussion about something, is to, approach it with thoughtfulness. So I appreciate that. And Trevor says, the bumper sticker on his car reads, "There is no normal, just be you." Isn't that the truth, Trevor? Have you ever known someone, and I've known more than one person like this, who you feel is quite obviously gay? Quite obviously. And yet they live their life as a straight person. And if they're not living life, underneath as a gay person, then they're in complete and utter denial. And my feeling is, I'm just so sad for you that you just can't be yourself. I'm so sad for you that you had to live life with kind of a sheet pulled over, you know, a blanket over your head because you can't be yourself. It's sad. How I feel. I like your bumper sticker. Yeah. Um, let's see what other comments you guys have about this before we move on. Social media exposes a lot of things that were once in the shadows. That's true. Lori says not more trans, just more open. John says, how come pre-Trump we didn't have issue with trans or drag shows? That's right. And we talked about this yesterday with the death of Dame Edna, who was beloved as a comedian and an entertainer for decades. Now, all of a sudden, we've got a problem with trans people. It was okay then, not okay now. It's okay with me. Kim, to add, because of toxicity, frogs are now able to reproduce regardless of sex. They are male and female. Yes, I understand. Thank you for that. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Thank you for contributing to the conversation as well and for supporting the show. You guys know the website, right? TheNikkiMadoroshow.com. Great way to PayPal it or Patreon it. And of course, as John just demonstrated, the super chat is live and the show is crowdfunded. So we appreciate any help we can get. You know what? With Nikki being gone for a couple of days, I've just really enjoyed the conversations with you guys. Different than what Mark does, and I love Mark, but I just love what you have to say and really getting a chance to read the chat. And I feel like if you're taking time to write the things, I really want to take time to read them and respond. JE again writing, it's extremely prevalent in young girls when for decades it's mostly been very young boys. I must have missed something that you stated earlier because I don't understand what the comment is. I'm sorry, JE. I don't understand that one. I think I missed the first part of it. Karen says it's why we appreciate you. Oh, well, thank you. I wouldn't say brilliant, but I do enjoy the thought exercise, and I hope that by the end of the show we've all had something to think about. That even if you are like JE or Chris, or you don't feel like, you support trans people or trans rights, you think it's a manufactured controversy or whatever, I feel like at least maybe you got food for thought, and that, even if you go away with the same opinions you've always had, maybe we had a discussion that made you think. Valuable to me. I have not had the Aloha burger at Super Burger, but I might have to have it. Maybe that's my Friday food. What do you think? Yeah, you're talking. So you're talking about more trans people because of the environment and using frogs as an example. I'm sorry, Karen. I really wasn't making the connection. So, see, not as brilliant as you thought. I understand what you're saying. Maybe it is, but it seems so much more emotional and maybe chemical in a way, like the way we're wired. It's possible. Anything's possible. Yeah. Chris writes, then so why not use the men's locker room? I would feel like I was encroaching on someone's space and making them feel uncomfortable if I were to just bust right into a men's locker room. However, Chris, I have been in men's locker rooms to do some reporting from time to time. So sometimes I've had to go in there. But if there was a woman's locker room, which is where I feel more comfortable, available, then I would not go into the men's. If a trans woman feels more comfortable in the woman's locker room, I say, come on in. We got room for you. It seems we are regressing as a society, writes John Smith. We didn't have this much outed racism and bigotry as these pre and post Trump years. And I've been thinking a lot about that, John, whether it's good or bad, because society might have been nicer and kinder and friendlier and more polite pre Trump. But I've heard people that are black say, there's racism in California. It's just not as blatant as it is in the South. It's under the surface. So, have we always been this way? And we just scratched the surface and let it all bleed out? Is that what happened? And is it better if it's just out in the open so we can address it and deal with it? Or is it better if it's hidden? Maybe in order to deal with it, we needed it all to leak out so that we can see it in the light of day. Maybe. Maybe if it's under the surface, you know, it makes it easier for us to just go along to get along and not ever really have to confront these issues. I'm not saying I like it or that it hasn't been hard in the last few years to see the ugliness or depressing to feel it. Those are the things that have been hard for me. But maybe it's that kind of hard work to know who we are as a society and that there's racism and that there's bigotry and that all these things I thought, well, I live in the Bay Area, that doesn't happen here, actually do happen here. People of color have felt it. Now I get to look at it and see it. So maybe there's something good coming out of that. That's all I can hope for. Yeah. I love how you show care and concern for each other. Yes, Karen. Amy's cool. We support Amy. And I don't think so, Chris. Honestly, I really don't. I think there are women in drag who look amazing. Amazing. Probably because they take the time to look amazing. I don't take the time to look amazing. So I disagree. I think drag performances are awesome. And usually it's women, women in drag, men in drag, who, by the way, that's different than trans. Drag performers and drag queens may not necessarily be trans people, is what I understand. So, yeah, that one thing does not follow the other. But I disagree. I love men in drag, and I think they are entertaining on purpose and lovely and often very kind. Yeah. Drag makeup is supposed to be over the top. That's not what Kim meant. Yeah. I'm glad you know what I meant. Thank you. I remember going to concerts a day on the green in the 70s, went to the Led Zeppelin concert in 77. There was nobody in the men's line. There was a line a mile long in the women's line. Yeah. That's when women cross over and say, you know what? If you guys aren't using the restroom, we are using your restroom. That's exactly what's about to happen right now. Yeah. This is a whole different topic, and I know we kind of got off on that tangent. Thank you for that discussion. You guys are amazing and so thoughtful. House Republicans are trying to scrounge up 218 votes on their package to raise the national debt limit. CNN reporting the GOP leaders are urging members not to let this bill fail, or else President Biden will have the advantage in the ongoing battle over the borrowing limit, is what they say. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy seemed to be uncertain about whether he'll need to make edits to the bill to entice members of his own party. Meanwhile, America's economy is slowing down. That's according to UPS, the shipping company. They say their revenue fell 6% in the first quarter compared to a year ago. That's a great indicator of the economy because people aren't sending as many packages then, right? We're not buying as much, sending as much. So I don't know. I have interesting news stories to discuss today. So before I wrap up the show, I don't know if you guys have anything to say about Tucker Carlson, the UPS flashing a warning sign about the U.S. economy, the missing lunar lander lost after the historic moon landing attempt. I'll give you a second if you guys have anything else that you wanted to add so we can finish up this conversation. Drag brunch is awesome. It is awesome, isn't it? John says you've always had racism, but now it's so outed and proactive thanks to Trump and the Republicans. Yeah. Yeah, drag does not equal trans, Lori. That's true. Thank you. And I like this. Many places are putting more single-seat unisex restrooms. Because honestly, I'd rather have my own little room anyway, to be honest. Happy about Tucker. It's an early Christmas present. Yeah. Sayonara, sucker, as they say. So I have some people to thank. One of them being Andreas. Let's help Nikki. Yes, let's always help Nikki. Wes, $10 following the direction of Andreas. Thank you, Andreas, and thank you, Wes. So appreciate you. Deidre from Lozica Concrete, $25. Thank you for the nice words. I appreciate that so much. Rick with $10. Rick, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Pamela Kirby for $4.99. Thank you very much for the contribution, Pamela. James Buchanan always having our backs with $4.99. Thank you, James. Really kind, really kind. And John Woodward with the $10 super sticker. Thank you for that. I so appreciate your contributions. You guys are so nice to crowdfund the show and to help keep us going. The super chat is live, even if you're listening to the recorded version of the show. So thanks for anything you can do for us there. And of course, the website is thenickymaduroshow.com. You've got the Patreon and the PayPal links right there for you. And before we go, please, oh, please, oh, please click the thumbs up button. That's free. That's something you can just go clickety click, and there it is. So thank you for that. And we appreciate you for being here. My thanks also to Camille from Politico for coming in and talking about the flooding situation. Really great information. And thank you for the great conversation today. I will be back tomorrow. We will be doing this again. And tomorrow, I'm giving you notice. I may put the link in the chat if anybody wants to pop in on the show and talk with me about your opinions, like an old radio show call-in. I'd love to do that with you as well. So thank you for that. But for now, you know it. We'll go to my boy. Here's Jakey.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're sprout like a beautiful blossom. You're all so the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.